Welcome everybody. Thank you so much for all the likes, shares and comments on my wall. We've had a really busy week, as you can imagine. I've been sharing some of the news articles, etc. on my wall, so I'm sure you've read those. But if you want, some people have asked about some of the background stuff that we've done. So please Google my name and you can read lots of articles online which detail about a decade's worth of work, which is all sorts of stuff with regard to regulators and even involves the police. So please Google me and read some of the back articles, and I'll definitely post some on my bio. Today I want to talk about one of those articles, which is in the Express. That was out this week. I've had lots of positive feedback from that. And the reason why I did that article is because I wanted to talk a little bit about my dad. There's a lot of theory that businesses are not built with hard work. So I wanted to talk about my background, and I wanted to show some credit to my father who's passed away, and talk about some of the effort that's gone through as my family in trying to build a business, trying to build our family. So my dad came here in the 50s from Pakistan, and from the time that he arrived till the time that he passed, he was self-employed. And he was a business guy, he was an entrepreneur. He was always trying to better himself and better his family. My dad didn't have a deep education, but he was adamant that he wanted all of his children to become very educated. So through his blood, sweat and tears, we all got educated. My siblings and myself, we all went to some really good universities and studied exactly what we wanted to study, and that we had a massive amount of support from our parents. So the reason why I want to talk about this, and the reason why my fight is so detailed, is because it's more than that. It's not just about losing money in a business. Everybody loses money in business. It's part of life, it's part of business. You have to accept it. But the other thing is that you can't have, or you can't accept, money being stolen from you. That's completely unacceptable, and then you should fight your hardest to try and make sure that you seek justice. What's happened to my family, I find massively personal, because it shows that 50 to 70 years of my family's efforts of blood, sweat, tears, hard work, study, education, staying up late nights, all of that work to be stolen by a bunch of rogues, to me, that's completely unacceptable. So what's happened in our case is effectively a bank robbery. But the irony is that normally people rob a bank. Here, the bank was robbing its customers. You had Lloyds effectively doing the robbing. You had its lawyers keeping watch. And then you had Alder King, they were in the getaway car. So I want to explain exactly some of the bits. So let's talk about basic economics. You give your best prices to your best customers. That's part of business. It's always been the way. So one trait that I found in Bristol was that all of the people that were arriving in Bristol were on the lowest rates, on the best prices. So how did all of these businesses that the bank did all this work on, who were so double-checked, etc., how did they all keep arriving at Bristol and they were on really fine margins, really low rates, really best prices? They couldn't have all been bad. They weren't bad. What happened was that the bank was struggling to make money. So the bank did an asset and liability schedule of its own and realized that it wasn't making much money from these best customers, and it wanted its money back. Effectively, the bank was nearly bust, and the bank's problems then became the customer's problems. So what did the bank do? It looked at all the people that were on really low rates and it decided to get its money back. So like cattle, it funneled them into Bristol. Bristol was an abattoir, it was a mortuary, it was a butchery. All of these businesses were being sent to Bristol without any knowledge of what was going on. I was told that I was moving to different departments of the bank along the way because my business was good, or there was an expertise, or there was a specialist department for property, etc., etc. And many of the other customers were fed the same lies. But what was waiting for people in Bristol were these butchers. They were already all prepped. Lloyds had given them aliases, email addresses, letterheads. These people were ready to go, and they held themselves out to be Lloyds bank managers. Greed got the better of them. As these businesses were coming into this department, people like Alder King were feasting off these businesses. But what they didn't realize is that because of their greed, they left behind a trace of DNA. And that's what these victims and myself have now got. That's what we've got. The bank is trying to defend the indefensible. It's taken us 10 years. Some people have gone to jail in Reading, but what the blood on the floor, the carcasses, and the evidence that we've got, it's gonna come out. And when it does, Lloyds is gonna have a lot to answer for, because the very top of the bank know exactly what has taken place. Let me give you one basic example. Now, because you know that I've got a police case, I can't really disclose the identity of this person, but let's pick a famous person, let's pick a name as an alias. So let's say if you found out that somebody by the name of Elizabeth Taylor was buying one of your properties that had been put into receivership recently. Well, the process of receivership is that you always retain ownership of that property. The receiver is instructed to sell the property on your behalf, and if he's acting in a proper manner, his job is to get the best possible price. Well, in one of my properties, I found out that it was agreed to be sold. So I contacted the sales estate agency and said, oh, you're selling one of my properties. And the sales agent said to me that they weren't allowed to disclose to me the identity of the purchaser. I thought, well, I'm the seller, I'm the vendor. Effectively, even though the receivership is happening, I should know who the purchaser is. Anyway, they were told specifically to tell me that the receiver said not to tell me the identity of the purchaser. I thought, okay. It just so happened that the owner of that estate agency I'd worked with for about a decade, they knew me well. So I contacted the principal and said, you can't do this, you have to disclose the identity. He said, of course we do. Let me speak to my sales department immediately. I then got a call back from them, and they came back to me and said that Elizabeth Taylor, alias, was buying my apartment for a price. I said, okay. It then turned out that an Elizabeth Taylor was the personal assistant of the same receiver who was buying my property at half price. When I put this to the bank's defense was that it was a different Elizabeth Taylor. Now that you can make your own mind up, but the name of that individual is so obscure that I find it impossible to believe that it was a different Elizabeth Taylor. There's an extra piece of evidence which I can't disclose on this video that nails them. So please continue to like, share and comment. Please make sure that if you've suffered like this, like I have, and your families, people have lost generations worth of farms. The farms that they've maintained for over 3 decades, 4 decades, 2 generations have been lost through the fraud that's taken place in Bristol. If you've got a case, make sure you fight it. If you've got your evidence, make sure you collate it. If you've got any details and you want some advice from us, please direct message me or get in touch. I wish you all the best. Wales is going into lockdown, so please stay safe and hopefully I'll see you at my next video. Thank you.